so that if you ever miss a session, you can log on to our YouTube page and watch it there. And then, of course, if you ever need to revisit any topics or, oh, there was the question or the thing Mike talked about, you have the opportunity to do that each and every time you want to via the recordings on the YouTube page. So tonight we're going to dive right in. Had a couple people reach out and we're interested in a few specific topics that we don't hit very often. So I'm going to start with land use controls and regulations, and then go into valuation and market analysis. These are a couple of the small to medium sized sections on the exam. So I'm going to hit those, and then of course, whatever else we would like to get to this evening. So let's just go ahead and dive right in to land use controls and regulations. Question number one: a valid exercise of the government's police power to restrict an owner's use and enjoyment of property includes A, building codes, B, easements by prescription, C, adverse possession, or D, deed restrictions. And if you haven't joined us in a while, it's your first time joining us, just drop an A, B, C, or D in the chat. And if you have no idea what the answer could possibly be, then by all means, put a question mark in there. All right, so we got a C and a couple of A's. All right, so as we like to do, the A's, since we have more A's than anything else, that's what we'll go with. And that is correct. Deed restrictions are private controls on the property. Adverse possession involves one individual taking possession of another's property. And then easements by prescription is a relationship between two parties where somebody gets to access another's property. So building codes are the only one that involve the government and are going to be a restriction on the owner's use and enjoyment of the property. Question number two: if you own a property with riparian rights and no prior appropriation, which of these could not be done? A, boating, B, irrigation, C, swimming, or D, damming? What do we think's going on here? You have riparian rights with no prior appropriation. Coco says damming. Angie says damming. Maurice says damming. All right, guys, sounds like we got a lot of people for damming, and that is correct. Boating and swimming and irrigation are all legal with riparian rights ownership. Damming is illegal because it has an effect downstream. So you're, with no prior appropriation, you cannot impact those downstream of you. Riparian rights, I do believe, are related to the river. All right, a developer must get a blank approved before building houses in a new subdivision. Is it A, a profit and loss statement, B, an affidavit of title, C, a plat, or D, a PUD? C's flood the chat, and a plat is correct. Before you divide the land, the government must approve the plat. which is how the land will be divided, where the roads and driveways will go. Question number 4, government regulations that specify minimum construction and building standards to safeguard health, safety, and welfare of the public are known as A, building codes, B, deed restrictions, C, assessed property, or D, buffer zones. What are those things that safeguard health and safety and the welfare of the public? These are government regulations for construction and building standards. Yes, you all got it. A, building codes. These are building codes. Question number 5, a charge against a property owner to cover the proportional cost of street paving is known as A, an assessment, B, a county tax, C, ad valorem tax, or D, the equitable obligation. All right, seeing C's in the chat box. Does anyone remember what ad valorem stands for? You see this show up from a tax standpoint, ad valorem tax. Usually schools. So we'll go with C. It's wrong. So A is an assessment, right? So an ad valorem tax is according to value, right? And so it's based on the value of the property. So, you know, the school taxes, school board taxes, or whatever you pay for schools is, you know, based on your home value, which is an ad valorem tax, according to value. In this situation, they're saying they paved the road and then they're going to charge everybody not according to their value. They're going to say, well, your house is worth 500,000. This guy's worth 250. So you got to pay twice as much as him. They're doing an assessment. And so you see this in condo associations and things of the like where, oh, we got to put a new roof on. We got to do, you know, we got to resurface the pool, whatever. And so everybody is getting assessed an equal share of the cost of putting that street in. So that is an assessment. All right, not too shabby, guys. You get 4 out of 5 right on the test. You're on your way to an 80%, which makes you a licensed realtor. All right, let's do valuation and market analysis. All right, question number 1. The income approach is probably most appropriate for A, a historic residential home, B, an apartment building, C, a residential property in a desirable area, or D, a museum. B, the apartment building is correct. These are revenue generating properties or income producing properties. So the income approach is going to be appropriate there. Question number 2 regarding the valuation of a property. The term appreciation refers to A, features, both tangible and intangible, that enhance the desirability of real estate, B, a defensible opinion or estimate of value for a property on a certain date, C, an increase in value of the property due to positive improvements in the area or elimination of negative factors, or D, payments of debt in regular periodic installments of principal and interest. What is appreciation? All right. Seeing a lot of C's in the chat. That feels like it's going to be a winner. Let's double check here just to make sure. Features, both tangible and intangible, that enhance the desirability of real estate are called amenities. A defensible opinion or estimate of value of real property on a specific date is an appraisal. And payment of debt in regular periodic installments of both principal and interest is amortization. So even if I had no idea what appreciation meant, I knew that these other things are not appreciation. They are, in fact, other things. So there you have it, an increase in value due to positive improvements or the elimination of negative factors. Question number 3, the cost approach is probably the most accurate when estimating the value of A, a single family home, B, an apartment building, C, a church, or D, a retail shopping center. A lot of A's in the chat box. Therese with the C. Way to stand alone there. And that is correct. The church is going to be the one that is best for the cost approach, because as somebody who has sold a few churches in his day, there are not a lot of churches for sale or that have currently sold. And so you have to figure out the value of that church based on a few different factors. And cost is one of them. Like, what would it cost to build? What would it cost to replace? The single family home is not a good use for the cost basis, because you have a number of different single family homes selling, north of 60,000 last year, which creates a lot of comparables, right? So you would price the house off of the comparables versus the cost. Otherwise, the cost of all houses would be the cost to build. Income capitalization is most likely to be used when the property is A, a grocery store, B, a single family home, C, an apartment complex, or D, none of these answers. All right. C's coming into the chat box. Looking good. Looking good for apartment complex. So income capitalization is simply the incomes and return on investment. Your income divided by your rate of return will put a value on the property. Again, this is for investment properties or for income properties, which an apartment complex is. All right, question number 5. An increase in the value of a property either due to positive improvements in the area or the elimination of negative factors is, and we had this one before, A, appreciation, B, appurtenance, C, appraisal, or D, assignment. And all the A's in the chat box tell me that that is correct. All righty, which is typically used on a market value appraisal? A, replacement cost, obtained by estimating the depreciated cost of an exact replica. B, replacement cost, obtained by estimating the depreciated cost of improvements with similar utility of the subject. C, reproduction cost, obtained by estimating the depreciated cost of an exact replica. Or reproduction costs obtained by estimating the depreciated cost of improvements with similar utility to the subject. Typical market value appraisal. Oh, excuse me. So lots of B's and D's. So I think we feel pretty confident that we're looking at either B, or D. Now, one of these definitions is the definition of replacement cost. One's the definition of reproduction cost. So in a situation like this, you need to know two things. You need to know, one, in a typical market value appraisal, am I going to use replacement cost or reproduction cost? And then what is the difference between reproduction and replacement costs? So one of these is replacement is going to be related to exact replicas. Reproduction is going to be, something that is of similar utility. Whoop, did I say that backwards? Yes, I did. Replacement is going to be using today's materials and methods versus reproduction, which is recreating the exact thing. I apologize. I said those backwards. So, the example that you'll see, I think, in your books or in your notes is, the idea that there is a, granite or marble table or countertop, from someplace in Italy. Replacement is replacing that with a similar function. It is a marble countertop. It is a granite countertop. Reproduction is going to be the exact replica, right? We need to go back to that place to get that same. And so, most of your typical market value appraisals are not going to take into consideration, that there's $100,000 granite countertop in the kitchen, because nobody's buying that house, with the expectation of getting, that they're going to be able to resell that, right? So apologies if I confused anyone there, but replacement, similar function; reproduction, exact replica. All right, the income approach on a single family rental would use which technique? Would it be the gross rent multiplier, income capitalization, the swag method, or the IRV? All right, we believe it's gross rent multiplier, and that is correct. Does anybody know what the swag method is? Has anybody ever heard of the swag method? Go ahead and put that in the chat box if you have. The reason I laughed is because SWAG is an acronym for Strategic Wild Ass Guess. Strategic Wild Ass Guess. And so if anybody ever tells you they're going to give you a swag, just means they're trying to ballpark it. And you don't want to do that to value homes. All right, a basement with a home with a basement wall that is falling is best described from suffering: A, incurable physical deterioration; B, curable functional obsolescence; C, incurable functional deterioration; or D, curable economic depreciation. So we got some A's and some D's. Looks like the A's have it. That's correct. Major structural problems usually cannot be fixed at any cost. That would make economic sense. This is an incurable physical deterioration. I would say, you could argue you could fix a basement wall. But in the case of this, they're demonstrating, it's not curable physical deterioration. So you have to believe that, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. RIP Meatloaf. That we are, incurable physical deterioration is going to be the answer that they were looking for. All right. A large manufacturer is building a factory in Flint, Michigan, booming metropolis. This will be a definite economic boost for the city. How will this affect home prices in the area? Will it A, make no immediate difference; B, cause home prices to fall; C, there is no real way to determine this, or D, home prices will rise. D is the correct answer. In the event that there is a positive economic development for a city in the form of jobs and increased wages, that typically increases the interest in living in that area, which increases the demand for housing. Therefore, with a all but constant supply of housing and increasing demand, home prices should rise. And question number 10, the term appraisal refers to A, the obligation to be personally liable for the conditions in a contract, B, a defensible opinion or estimate of value on real property on a specific date, C, the value of real property fixed for purposes of computing taxes, or D, an increase in value either due to positive improvements or the elimination of negative factors. Once again, we'll work through here and see, it is B, but what is A? A should be assignment. B is appraisal. C, the value of real property fixed for purpose of computing taxes, I believe is going to be assessment or assessment rate. And D, increase in value, is appreciation. All right. Assumption, not assignment. The obligation to be personally liable for the conditions in a contract is going to be assumption. All right, guys, that takes us through the first couple for tonight. What else would you like to practice? Throw it in the chat box. Give me some stuff to work with here. Financial and contracts for the win. So when you say financial, Coco, we talking real estate calculations or financing? Financing. All right, terrific. Well, we're going to go, let's see, it looks like financing is maybe 10 questions. So we're going to dive into that, and then we're going to, 10 questions. We're going to get through financing, and then we're going to spend the rest of the time on contracts. And why? Because if you've been here before, you've heard me say that there is no single section on the test that has more questions than contracts. If you had to study only one thing, you would study contracts. So we're going to hit contracts. But first, we're going to hit financing. The Fair Credit Reporting Act gives borrowers which rights? A, all these rights. B, the right to dispute inaccuracies on their credit report. C, the right to a free copy of their credit reports. D, the name of anyone who has received a copy of the borrower's credit reports in the last 6 months. What does the Free Credit Reporting Act give you the right to? And guys, when in doubt on your exam, if you don't know, and all of the above or none of the above is an option, and that is going to be your best guess, right? If you're ever in a situation where you have no idea what the hell's going on and you're going to deploy the swag method, then just pick the one that says all of the above or none of the above. Your odds are best. Question number 2. Which of the following individuals is protected under the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, but not the Federal Fair Housing Act? Is it A, familial status, B, marital status, C, ancestry, or D, sex? All right, a lot of B's in the chat saying marital status, and that's correct. It is not a protected class under the Federal Fair Housing Act, but is under the Equal Credit Opportunity Act. Somebody cannot say that you can't get a credit card or can't get a bank account or don't have access to credit because of your marital status. All right, question number 3. The primary function of the secondary mortgage market includes all of the following with the exception of A, to buy real estate mortgages, B, to make loans to the public, C, to sell real estate mortgages, or D, to provide greater liquidity in the mortgage market. Which one of these is not something the secondary mortgage markets do? B is correct. Secondary mortgage markets are secondary, so they are not primary, which means they do not make loans directly to the public. Which federal statute requires a lender to give a borrower a statement of total interest being paid over the life of the loan? Is it A, the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, the ECOA, B, the Federal Fair Housing Act, C, Regulation Z, or Regulation Z, as it would be in Canada or the UK, or D, the Fair Credit Reporting Act? Which of these requires a lender to give a borrower a statement of total interest being paid over the life of a loan? Lots of C's for Regulation Z, and that is correct. It is also known as the Truth in Lending Act, or it's a part of the Truth in Lending Act, rather. And it requires them to disclose all costs for obtaining a loan, including interest rates, payments over the life of the loan, etc., etc. Question number 5. If the price of carpeting is $19 per square yard, how much will it cost to carpet a room that is 15 by 15? Is it A, $4,275, B, $1,100, C, $475 American dollars, or D, $750? Angel and Coco both in with A. Stacy coming through with C. Man, anyone who ordered A, I ought to sell you guys some carpet because you are willing to overpay. So you're going to get questions like this on the exam. You got to watch out, right? Because what happens is we see numbers and we freak out and we panic and we just start multiplying, get to an answer that oh man, I found this. I got to a number that's here. Of course, they're going to give you the numbers that are there, even if they're wrong. The price of carpets in square yards. You have the room in feet. If you multiply feet by feet, you get square feet, right? So you can't multiply square feet by square yards and get the right answer. So what you have to do is figure out what's the room in square yards. So instead of 15 feet by 15 feet, it's 5 yards by 5 yards. So 5 times 5 is 25. 25 times 19 is 475. 15 times 15 is 225, times 19 is 4275. That's why you can get the right answer. You can get an answer that's there even though if you do it wrong. I'm telling you, more people miss math problems because they ignore the words and they fixate on the numbers. If I were you, if you're nervous about math, skip all math questions until they're the last 10 questions that you have to answer. And then take your time, right? Answer too fast, go too quick, try and just jam numbers together. Nope, no chance of getting these right. Give yourself time, and read the question, think about what it's asking, you'll get the best of it. If a lender, question number 6, if a lender is charging a borrower an interest rate of 5% and also charging the borrower 2 points, what is the lender's yield? Is it A, 7.25%, B, 5.25%, C, 10%, or D, 7%? Bunch of question marks, and then we got a B from Angel. Angel, would you care to tell us how you got to B? If you're in a position to unmute and do that. The concept of points can be a little bit confusing, or a lot of it confusing, right? Because when you pay points on a loan, there's the it was a swag, she said. Okay. And then Stacy, you put in D, which is, if you consider a point 1%, 5 points plus 2 points is 7 points. Not bad. And I will admit, this can be a little bit confusing, can be a little bit challenging, because when you see the questions about like, hey, this person's going to pay 2 points, how much do they have to pay? That is 1% of the total loan amount to pay for points up front. And I believe that the overall impact on the yield for the lender is 1/8% per point, I believe. So in this case, I believe Angel's strategic wild ass guess is going to be correct. So the lender's yield on interest rate plus points is 5% plus 1/4%, 2 points, so 5.25%. When calculating points for the exam, remember that it takes 8 points to make 1% of interest. So 1/8 of a point is, or 1/8 of a percent is a point. So the other, I mean, you know, maybe Angel's strategy is the one we should all be deploying when we get to points on the exam. All right, the rate of mills for Columbus, aka Cowtown, Ohio, is 97. And the assessment level for the community is 35%. For a property with a value of $280,000, what will the annual taxes be? So this is a mills question with an assessment rate. So what you want to do is take the value of the home, which is $280,000, times the assessment rate, 0.35%, or 0.35 for 35%. That is $98,000 is the assessed value of the property. Now we know that we are dealing with mills. When you see mills, you divide by 1,000, which means that the value of a mill is $98. And if we know that the number of mills for taxes is 97, we will multiply 98 times 97. We will get 9,506, and we will be right. So for mills, always assessment rate first, then divide by 1,000, then multiply by the number of mills, then select that answer. Which class is protected under the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, but is not protected under the Federal Fair Housing Act? We've had this question once before already. Everyone hopefully gets this one right. That's right, guys. Marital status is protected under the ECOA, but not the Federal Fair Housing Act. Question number 9. Gray purchases a home from Black. Gray will pay $700 a month in a balloon payment, and title transfer will take place in 5 years. This is A, purchase money mortgage, B, amortized loan, C, contract for deed, or D, blanket mortgage. What type of financial instrument is in play here? All right, we got some C's and D's. So we know it's not a purchase money mortgage because purchase money mortgage, everything changes hands right away. We actually don't know what the interest and principal components of this are. We have nothing of interest rates, so it cannot be an amortized loan. A blanket mortgage is for multiple properties under the same loan. So this is actually a contract for a deed. And you know, the real function here is that the title transfer will take place in 5 years. That's the most important part, is that you're in contract to get the deed and the title down the line. Question number 10. An investor wants a 9% rate of return on his investment. How much income would a property have to generate to justify a $980,000 price? 9% rate of return, $980,000 price. How much income? All righty. It is quite simply that 9% times the price. Rate times price or value. Rate times value equals income. So for income divided by price to equal 9%, you need that income component, the I, to be 88,200 or 9% of the total price. All right, gang, let's move on to contracts. Get some contracts going here. Question number 1, the term specific performance refers to A, the agreement of all parties of the contract, B, the right of either party to cancel the contract provided legal notice is given, C, an executed contract in which all elements have been specifically fulfilled, or D, a legal procedure brought by either the buyer or seller to enforce terms of the contract. All right, looks like we've got a lot of C's in the chat. The answer is D. Specific performance is the legal procedure in which you are either the buyer or seller can force the other party to specifically perform what they are supposed to in the contract, right? So you sue for specific performance if somebody is not doing what they should be doing per a contract. Which would a buyer prefer? A land installment contract or a purchase money mortgage? Which one does the buyer prefer? Is it A, purchase money mortgage, B, a land installment contract, C, either as both convey equitable title, or D, either as both convey legal title? Which one would a buyer prefer? The answer should be a purchase money mortgage, because in that event, the buyer receives the deed to the property on the day of closing, versus land installment contract where they would not receive that until the contract is fulfilled. Question number 3. A buyer makes an offer subject to reviewing the results of a home inspection. After the inspection, the buyer is ready to move forward with the deal. Which does the buyer's agent need to do at this point? A, advise the buyer to renegotiate the purchase price. B, prepare an addendum removing the contingency. C, require that the sellers make the recommended repairs to the listing listed on the inspection report. Or D, recommend that the buyer get an appraisal for the property. What are they going to do? What do we think here, guys? Pretty straightforward, actually. Like, don't overthink it. Like, this is so simple, it might feel like it's a trick. Now, buyers reviewed the home inspection. They say they're ready to move forward. So all you do is you prepare an addendum to remove the contingency. Great, we're done. They looked at the inspection, they're fine. We're moving on, right? It doesn't have to be a negotiation. They're not those. It doesn't say that your buyers are asking for anything, right? You just prepare the addendum to say, yes, we want to remove the contingency for inspection as it has been completed. Question number 4. Which are liquidated damages? Are they the losses suffered when liquidating a business? Are they B, a cashier's check used to empty a broker's trust account? C, is it paper money that has been soaked for 24 hours? Or is it D, an amount the parties agree on to settle a potential dispute? Liquidated damages are those damages that people agree on to settle the dispute. Hey, you're wrong. No, you're wrong. Pay me $2,000 and make everything go away. Okay. Question number 5. A listing agent shows a buyer a home. The buyer fills out an offer to buy the home, which the listing agent takes, explains to the sellers. Good job. The sellers like the offer and sign the acceptance of it. They then hand the offer to their agent with instructions to deliver the accepted contract back to the buyer. At this point, all of the following statements are true, except A, the sellers have not relinquished control of acceptance. B, the offer was accepted by the sellers. C, the listing agent is now in possession of an accepted offer. Or D, the accepted offer doesn't need to be communicated or delivered to the buyer. Which one of these is not true? That is right. The first three are very true, but the fourth one does need to be completed so that you have an offer that is under contract. Question number 6, a broker deposits a buyer's $500 of earnest money into the broker's personal checking account. The broker is guilty of A, cooperation, B, capitalization, C, commingling, or D, condemnation. C is correct. Commingling is when you take some funds and you put them in the wrong account. Conversion is when you put the funds in the right account, but you use them for the wrong thing. Question number 7, which is not an essential element of a real estate contract. A, offer and acceptance. B, good consideration. C, valuable consideration. Or D, lawful and possible object. Lawful and possible object is going to be pretty important to a real estate contract. You are only going to want to enter into contract for a house that somebody can legally sell you or under terms that are legal to perform, right? So the answer is B, good consideration. Good consideration are things like kindness and love, and other things that don't have intrinsic value. Valuable consideration are things like money and hard goods and jewelry and metals and anything that has value that you can buy or sell. Offer and acceptance are necessary, as well as lawful and possible object. Question number 8, if the buyer in a contract for deed who is paid less than 20% of the purchase price defaults, the seller may A, file a judgment lien, B, wait 10 days and sell to somebody else, C, initiate forfeiture proceedings, or D, initiate foreclosure proceedings. So if this was a purchase money mortgage, it would be foreclosure. If it was over 20%, it would be foreclosure. The fact that it's under 20%, I believe, on a land contract should be forfeiture. They're forfeiting the property. If it's over 20%, it would be foreclosure proceedings. Or if it was a purchase money mortgage, they didn't pay their mortgage, you would foreclose. Question number 9. Which has occurred when a contract has been rescinded and each party returns to the others any consideration that may have been tendered? Is it A, reconciliation, B, replacement, C, restitution, or D, restoration? Looks like we got a C, some A's. Looks like we got 2 C's and 2 A's. Somebody else put an A or C in the chat box. Let's see if we're restituting or we're reconciling here. Gianna with the A. Tough break. It is restitution. Restitution is rescission, where all the contract is undone, all the obligations are terminated, and all considerations are returned to their responsible party. Reconciliation is the appraisal process. So when you do an appraisal, you can use a half a dozen different methods, and then you reconcile them all to get to a price. Question number 10. A buyer makes an offer to buy a house for $50,000, and the seller does not accept the offer, but responds that they will accept no less than $55,000. The seller has just made A, a bilateral enforceable contract, B, a unilateral enforceable contract, C, a counter offer, or D, an option. Lots of C's in the mix here, and you are correct. That is a counter offer. Let's do one more, and then we'll wrap for the evening. If the landlord and the real estate manager of a national retailer both execute a retail lease and the corporation fails to occupy the premise, what might prevent the landlord from enforcing the contract? A, the economy declined. B, the real estate manager had authority to make the deal. C, the broker did not have a written listing. Or D, there was no corporate resolution granting signing authority to the real estate manager. So there you go. D is going to be the right answer here. This is a little bit of a frustrating, corner case, but it demonstrates that when you're dealing with corporations, you have to ensure that the parties involved have the authority to make the decisions that they do. And most title companies will require a corporate resolution or proof of majority ownership for anybody that is doing so on behalf of a corporation. All right, one more. Let's end on a good note here, guys. A condition or contingency in a contract can be waived by the A, broker for the buyer, B, lender's appraiser, C, broker for the seller, or D, a party benefiting from the condition or contingency. Who can waive a condition or contingency? The only person who can waive any condition or contingency is the person benefiting from it, right? So an example here is like an inspection contingency. The buyer has the right per the contract to have an inspection. They can waive that because they're the party with something to gain, right? The parties with something to lose, brokers for the seller themselves, can't waive something that could ultimately hurt them. So instead, they have to put themselves in, the only person who can waive any contingency is the person who would benefit from it. All right. All right, guys, that's going to take us right up to the top of the hour. Appreciate all you guys being here. I want to remind everybody, if you've scheduled your exam, please send me an email at michael.rapaski@kellerwilliams.kw.com and let me know what date you're testing. I'd like to be able to send some good vibes your way. Make sure that we can cheer you on and make sure we're aware of when we can get you rocking and rolling on after you pass your exam. If you have not sent your paperwork down to the state and you need to do that with me, please reach out to me under the same email address, michael.rapaski@kw.com. And finally, if we've sent your paperwork down and you haven't heard anything, reach out to me and I'll try and help you with that. We know that the state's backed up. We know that there's a lot of things going on. We know that there's, a lot of mysteries down there at the Ohio Division of Real Estate these days, taking 2 or 3 weeks to get paperwork processed. But if you let me know, I've got some open lines of communication with a few folks down there and hopefully could identify a few things for you to get you some answers. So please be in communication and conversation with me on any of those so that I can help. And in the meantime, we will be here each and every Monday night at 6 p.m. And you can find recordings of this session and all the others at youtube.com and just search Keller Williams Greater Metropolitan Training. All right. Any questions, comments, concerns, smart remarks, or physical threats to close out the evening? All right. Hearing none, I will bid you all adieu and see you in 6 days and 23 hours. Have a wonderful week, guys. Stay warm, stay safe, and we will see you next time. Take care.